My name's Scott Parker. Rock and roll saved my soul. Growing up during the 1980s in Southern California, I took comfort in feedback and power chords. My fate was sealed between the wax and the needle of the records that filled my room. I found refuge at the Cuckoo's Nest, Fender's Ballroom, and the Palladium. Along the way, I worked in a shoe warehouse with a member of Jane's Addiction, got high with Willie Nelson, and hopped a private jet to South America with Joan Jett and the Foo Fighters. My biggest reward for a life devoted to rock and roll is that I've become friends with some of the same artists whose music helped guide me through my youth. Now I get to sit down with these fellow raconteurs to tell our tales. This is my life. This is Death or Glory. On this episode, I sit down with the Foo Fighters' Chris Shiflett and Jonny Two Bags from Social Distortion.
We determined a while ago that we met in Canada on the Snow Jam.
Quebec City.
Right.
I clearly remember asking you for a
string,
like
or
an E string.
Yeah, right.
We were both backstage at this show.
And you were in the Tramps?
No, I was in Youth Brigade.
And you were in
No Use for a Name.
No Use for a Name.
Changing our strings, just back there like you do, when you don't have a guitar tech, and I, as usual, I didn't have all my stuff.
But we used to do it. That's the point.
Neither of you do it anymore.
Hey, I do it. I do it when I'm out doing my thing.
Yeah.
And do you as well?
Oh yeah, and that's it's funny. And we've done so many Dead Peasants shows around Southern California in the last couple of years, or whatever. That maybe it's lost its charm. But I remember when we first started doing those shows, people go like, "Why are you loading your own gear?" Because that's what you do.
Right. Do you guys do that whole Snowcore tour together, or was it just a show?
I think it was just through it was like the first half of it, or maybe it was like Quebec, Montreal, Toronto, or something like that.
We didn't even we just did a one-off on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the only show. Yeah.
That was a wild tour, because that tour, we did the whole thing, and I don't know if that was like the first or second year. Maybe it was the second year they did it, or whatever. And so they tried to make it all the way across Canada, and we had toured out to the East Coast, in the States. And for No Use for a Name, at that time, the draw got progressively smaller and smaller. It just dwindled the further east you got. So I'll never forget, on that tour, we played New York City at Coney Island High, and there was 100 people there. And we went up to Boston, we played the Rat, and there were 70 people there. And then we went up to, I guess, Quebec City, and there was 1,000 people there. So we didn't play to 1,000 people fucking anywhere.
Right.
And it was amazing. And so 1,000 people. And then the next night was the Spectrum in Montreal, sold out. And, big theater. We're yeah, this is fucking insane. In Toronto was 800 people, and then we started getting out into Saskatoon and Regina and Thunder Bay, and everywhere it just got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I remember we were somewhere. I don't even know where the hell we were. They're somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and I remember calling the promoter and saying what time do we load in? He goes, well, we've got a trout convention in the hall today, so that's you gotta wait till they clear out of there, or some shit like this. It just kind of dwindled as it just died.
Did you guys used to do Thunder Bay on a regular basis?
We only ever went there once, and it was that tour. And I remember somebody telling me that's the coldest place in Canada.
Thunder Bay is gnarly. Thunder Bay is where it's right in the center, So if you're traveling from west to east, you need to do a gig, So we did it all the time. We probably played Thunder Bay, 9, 10, 12 times. I don't know.
Really?
And do you remember band houses in Canada? Did you ever experience that? A lot of the venues, back then at least, I don't know if they still do, the promoter, rather than putting the band up in a hotel, they just had band houses. Right? And some of them were really nice. This place in Winnipeg, we stayed there all the time, and this girl lived there, and she kind of took care of the place. And it was rooms, a big house, a big 5-bedroom house with beds or bunks, super clean, a kitchen that was you could buy some groceries and cook in there and just hang out for a couple of days while you're in town, right? It was super cool. Of course, some of them, Thunder Bay being one of them, was just a step above a crack house, man. gnarly, man. And my girlfriend was with us, and we went to crash out on one of the beds. A couple hours later, we were like, why is this bed does it seem wet to you? And we're like, no! Somebody had pissed it the night before, man. We were like, oh my God. I've never played the Warped Tour, but I worked on it in '97.
Oh, you've worked on it?
I worked my ass off on that thing.
You've never done it with Social D?
And you guys No, Social D's only done one, and that was the year before I worked it.
We did the 95 Warped Tour. That was the first one when I was in No Use, and that one was like, you know, it was super fun. One of the funnest tours I've ever done, but a total disaster, like everywhere.
That was the one Red 5 did, right?
Yes, that's how I met Mitch.
Yeah.
What was the
on
first
that
year?
tour.
of the
95.
Warped Tour? Oh, you did the very first one?
Yeah, the very first
Okay.
one.
That's so crazy because by 97, the year I went out, it felt like that thing was so established.
No,
it felt
by
like it had
96.
been around. It felt like this thing's been around for 10 years.
We did the beater one, and then I remember when they announced who was doing it the next time. I was like, No Effects, Pennywise, Lagwagon, like all. It was like, what? Can we come? And they're like, nope.
I bet.
That tour is a real grind for crew and band.
It's
both,
gnarly,
You know?
yeah.
I mean, you really get into like a rhythm on that thing. You like wake up and you're there, and you go, "Where's the
Absolutely.
fucking coffee?"
I had my day was I had it wired. Man.
Yeah.
But you really do. If you don't find that rhythm, you're basically screwed, man.
Yeah.
Like you have to like get into that flow, or it's really difficult. You know?
I don't mean this as a negative at all, because I'm very aware of how lucky, like the fact that I get to be in a band that, you know, pays for my kids' lives and all that stuff. But it is a funny thing that doesn't really exist for me anymore. Like the way we did like a whole tour, you know, a few years ago, or a whole cycle, if you will. And because we rarely were even on like a tour bus. Like, you know, a lot of it was like fly in, fly out type of stuff, which is like an incredible luxury. And I'm not bitching about it at all. I want to make that very clear. Right. But the one little downside to it is I didn't feel like I had ever been on tour at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like ever. Like it just felt like a series of shows, which is great. Like that's a great comfortable thing. But it's not that same thing of like, I'm a fucking animal right now, and I'm on the road for 7 weeks, and I'm in a fucking van with 7 dudes, and I'm sitting shoulder to shoulder, and I'm sharing a little shitty hotel room with, you know, 3 to 4 other guys,
Right.
and we're doubling up on beds, and maybe I'm going to sleep on the floor. Like that puts you in a different state of mind. That's like I think a good thing for you to go through at some point in your life.
It puts you in it gets you in the us against them. It really is us against the world, because you're in these close quarters, and it is that team, like we're all in together, we're all rowing the same, you know, and it's that gang mentality.
Yeah, and every single little victory, you know, is so satisfying. You know, it's like you play a good show, and you guys are just backstage afterwards. It's like it's so that energy, you know.
And even just the little stuff, like you don't have to call anybody to say, do you want to go get some coffee and get some breakfast in the morning because you're waking up next to them, or you know, there is no option. Like, I mean, you never go do something by yourself. You're in each other's pockets the whole fucking time. Right. You know what I mean? Because I had this brief window in my life that I want to return to ever, but like where I had no fucking responsibility. Yeah. You know, I made enough money to live, and everywhere I went, there were fucking free drinks, and there was chicks that wanted to talk to you, and there was loud punk rock, and there was
a gig to play.
There's a gig to play, and there was that whole thing. And I didn't care. I'll sleep on a fucking floor. Right. I'll sleep fucking wherever, or maybe I won't sleep. You know what I mean? Like, and that was fine. You know what I mean? I just want to go on record saying that you can do that to this one.
Yeah, do whatever
you
you
have
want.
my blessing.
See, they don't care.